Joining me now, Jacob Magid, the U.S. Bureau Chief for the Times of Israel. Thank you for being here. It's nice to have you in person. Let's begin with a possible new deal for these hostages. What are you hearing?
We're not there yet. I think Hamas just earlier today said that they weren't prepared to do any sort of deal unless the fighting completely stops, and that's a long-term ceasefire, not the short-term truce that Israel's talking about. President Isaac Herzog today met with a group of foreign ambassadors and said for the first time that, yeah, we're really interested in some sort of short-term truce, pause in the fighting is how he called it, in order to get these hostages out. But right now, the sides are kind of not really so close to one another. Qatar and the U.S., I think there's going to need to be some direct engagement from President Biden in order to move this along, to push Qatar, to push the Hamas militants to maybe speak about some changing their terms, because right now we're not so close.
And what are the terms? I mean, what would be some concessions that Israel and also the U.S. would have to make here to get a deal done?
I think on the Israeli side, we're going to have to see even more humanitarian aid come into the Strip. We're right now looking at around close to 200 trucks yesterday, but before the war, we were seeing 500 trucks a day. So we're still a massive difference of where we were before. And I think also more fuel, which Hamas also wants to divert for its own use, and that's why that's always been a big demand in these negotiations. But I think more than anything, it's just a long, sustained pause in fighting to allow these Hamas terrorists to regroup. That's what they wanted the first truce for, that 7-day truce that we saw at the end of November, and that's what I think they're looking for again now, a very long period of pause in fighting.
Are we talking weeks? Are we talking more than that?
I don't see Israel agreeing to more than weeks. I think there's still a determination across the Israeli security establishment that this war needs to continue. There's a recognition that they only have several weeks left in terms of U.S. backing for this war. We just had Lloyd Austin in town, the U.S. Defense Secretary, yesterday, and U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and the message of them both was that you have until early January probably. They're not saying this publicly. They want to give Israel publicly some leeway to continue working and say that they don't have any timeline set, but I know privately those are the conversations. So the idea of having a weeks-long pause and then also the war ending in weeks, I don't see, or at least to scale down and fighting to lower intensity is what they're calling it, not so likely.
We have to be real careful what Hamas is releasing in terms of videos of the hostages that remain. It is their leverage, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the longer they keep these hostages, the more they can get out of any deal and the longer this goes on. But has there been proof of life? I mean, what was the most recent check on any of the hostages, their well-being and their livelihood?
So the two ways to get proof of life are these videos that these kind of psychological warfare that they put out. Yesterday, there was one of 3 elderly Israelis who were currently held hostage. Some of their families hadn't seen them in over 70 days. So that's, in some ways, it's a relief. In other ways, it's quite disturbing.
And how did they look? I mean, we're not showing the videos.
I mean, they have them kind of looking in the Salafi, Muslim Salafi garb and shaved heads, long beards with no mustache. So it's quite startling, I think, for their families to see them looking like that. Those who spotted their family members said they looked very emaciated, not as healthy as they once were. And the other way that we can find out about signs of life is that hostages who have been released, who have been able to see these hostages that are still there, can report back and say how to their relatives and see how they're doing.
And have any of these videos been time-stamped, right? Like you've seen hostage videos where they'll hold up today's newspaper, for example?
Earlier on, there were some mentions about the date by the hostages that were filmed in them. More recently, there hasn't been a specific time, but I think IDF intelligence is able to get a general understanding of when these videos were taken.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.